So today I have a very special video for you all from a long time ago. Unfortunately, I do not like to admit how long ago it was because it's actually been over 10 years since this video. I'm getting old. Okay, first of all, I've had gray in my beard since I've been able to grow a beard. So don't look at me like I'm older than you. You're old. So how about that? But this old soul decided to just drop one of the most epic rants in response to a question asked to him in the 2008 presidential debates. Mike Gravel, which I didn't know at the time, by the way, because I was actually in basic training, he just obliterated his opponents in the debates, in my humble opinion. This question shows just how far ahead of the rest of the game that Mike Gravel was. Take a listen.
My name is John. I'm from West Virginia. My question is for Mike Gravel. In one of the previous debates, you said something along the lines of the entire deaths of Vietnam died in vain. How do you expect to win in a country where probably a pretty large chunk of the people voting disagree with that statement and might very well be offended by it? I'd like to know if you plan to defend that statement or if you're just going to flip-flop. Thanks.
John, why would you think I would flip-flop? I've never flip-flopped before, and I like to question. I don't get very many of them. But I'll just tell you, thank you. Has it been fair thus far? I'll tell you, John, it's a set-up question. Our soldiers died in Vietnam in vain. You can now, John, go to Hanoi and get a Baskin-Robbins ice cream cone. That's what you can do. And now we have most favored nation trade. What did all these people die for? What are they dying for right now in Iraq every single day? Let me tell you, there's only one thing worse than a soldier dying in vain. It's more soldiers dying in vain.
Senator Obama, are the soldiers dying in Iraq in vain?
Yup. Wow. That was a very powerful video. It was a trap question. And I mean, think of everything that took place during that. And it's crazy because back then, I truly feel, and I don't know, like I said, because I was actually in basic training during the entire election. Or at least for when the debate started, I was in basic training. And then after the debates were coming to a close, I was actually in AIT. So I didn't get to see any of it. However, I feel like the people's responses back then would have been like, oh, he's just whining, because he called out the fact that he was not getting as many questions as the other candidates. And like, now we know for a fact there's a reason for that. It's because of answers like these. It's because his answers are authentic. It's because Mike Gravel is and has always been an actual progressive, and the Democratic Party has always used its apparatus to suppress actual progressivism. When he asked Mike Gravel if he was going to flip-flop, I must admit, I don't know who the kid is, obviously, but I was like, bro, did you do your research on Mike Gravel before you asked this question? Did you do your research on Mike Gravel before you asked, is he going to flip-flop? And he even said, why would you think I'm going to flip-flop? I'm the only consistent person on this damn stage right now. What are you talking about, young buck? But the most epic moment out of all of the debates, because I've been watching clips recently, because everybody's been talking about how great the clips are of Mike Gravel. That was one of the most epic rants on the national stage that I have ever seen. The reason why is because we know for a fact Vietnam was a lie of a lie. I mean, it was one of the most epic lies that has been told and sold to the American public. Not only because, any war that is based on a lie is problematic. It is evil, and the people who started that war should be tried for war crimes. Those who continue to perpetuate it, like Lyndon B. Johnson for profit, whose family was responsible for building a lot of the canals that were in Vietnam, became a billionaire after that. People like him should be tried for war crimes, and we should be telling the truth about who they were as people. See, Mike Gravel understands that we can't keep maintaining lies just because they are comfortable. In other words, to put it in a reference that many of my younger supporters may understand, we can't remain plugged into the matrix because that steak tastes really good, because I miss sunlight, because I miss the feels. Lyndon B. Johnson was a monster. The people responsible for orchestrating the Vietnam War, that was in part to test weapons that we had just created, including Agent Orange. And Agent Orange, in case you didn't know, or Anthrax, is a modified version of Agent Orange that we eventually ended up giving to Saddam Hussein to use against Iran at one point. And then it got used against our soldiers. What made Vietnam so much worse, as far from an American perspective, is this wasn't merely a war where people who were in the military were sent to go fight in. No, they tore men away from their families to go die for someone to make money. It was never about communism. It was never about Russia. It was never about the Cold War. Vietnam, the people of Vietnam will never be the same. Like, they have genetic disorders that stem from the chemical weapons we were using on them. We wouldn't even use chemical weapons on the Nazis who were using chemical weapons on us and the rest of the Allied powers. We wouldn't use chemical weapons on the Russians that we were supposedly so scared of. We were terrified of the Russians, but we used them on Vietnamese. We used them in Cambodia. We used them in Laos. Those soldiers, and this is as a veteran, I am a veteran, in case you were curious. Those soldiers died in vain. And the ones who survived, a lot of them suffer survivor's guilt because at a certain point, you recognize and you realize that you are fighting for the wrong team. See, with World War II, it was a lot. When people came back home, they obviously suffered from PTSD, but it wasn't the PTSD where, like, you're guilty, because Pearl Harbor did indeed get bombed, and we can get into all the nuance of World War II. And I understand, for those of you who know the real history of World War I and World War II, that you're like, well, there's a little bit more to it than that. I know, but in the minds of Americans, they were there for a reason. There was a righteous cause. There was no righteous cause for Vietnam. People were being called up, hey, go join Vietnam. You got to get a gun in your hand. You got to go to basic training. You got to go get shot at. And you got to go kill innocent people. You think that we are not instinctually killers, people. Despite what has been demonstrated by a lot of, Americans, and what might be demonstrated by Western media, like we're all cold-blooded killers if we had the chance to be. No, that's not true. Most of us at that point are shooting to survive, because we know at the end of the day they're going to shoot back at us, rightfully so. The same people who survived Iraq, who had committed a murder of an innocent person overseas, or saw it, witnessed it, a lot of them come back with the same exact guilt. Suicides at an all-time high right now. These are the consequences of these illegal wars that Tulsi Gabbard is always discussing, which is probably why Mike Gravel endorsed Tulsi Gabbard so early. So I want you all to go to Mike Gravel's website. I want you to donate because 2008 is not the same as 2019. The words that may have fallen on deaf ears would no longer fall on deaf ears because most of the country is or is about to wake up and are just waiting for that spark. Mike Gravel will not be speaking by himself about the realities of these regime change wars and these, what Bernie Sanders like to call quagmires. He will be up there with a progressive team whose voices have been amplified over the last few years. And their voices have been amplified by speaking the same truths that he has been just bravely speaking for the last 3 or 4 decades. This is epic. Like I said, I'm like, wow, is he going to pussyfoot around it? Like, he just tested, the kid tested Mike Gravel's gangster just then. And he knocks it out of the park and the crowd claps. And like I said, the most powerful line, that video, was when he said, "What the only thing worse than soldiers dying in vain are more soldiers dying in vain." Truer words about the military-industrial complex has never been spoken, as far as from the perspective of Americans. Would love to know what your thoughts are about this. Like the video. Go donate to Mike Gravel right now. Let's give him the 65,000 donations, because if anybody deserves to be on the debate stage after a lifetime of consistent and regular progressivism, it's Mike Gravel. Always remember people more than anything else. Find your balance. Peace. Thanks for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Roku TV, and on JustNForm.com. Also, you can make sure that you're subscribed to the channel by going to the subscribe button, pressing it, and hitting that notification bell to get all of our notifications. And of course, you can help us reach our goal of 500 patrons on Patreon by supporting the show by donating as little as $1. You can click on the link in the description below for that. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.